Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special episode of Convince Me. You say we don't listen to you? Nobody actually says that, but somebody might say it somewhere. Well, this time we do, because this week, this episode is brought to you straight from the suggestion of one of our listeners. It's Bennett and it's Elrod. And it's going to be, I guess we could say, an action-packed episode. We'll get into that right here this week on Convince Me. Welcome in, everybody. This is Convince Me. I'm Andy Rutherford, joined, as I am most of the time, by Mr. Brian Bennett, Mr. Casey Elrod. Gentlemen, how goes it?
You know, people can no longer say we're not men of the people because we're giving the people what they want. People power. Hashtag people power.
You know, when you said this episode was suggested by one of our listeners, he literally means our one listener. So
He's the reason we know we have at least one, is because it was a topic of conversation brought up to me personally by someone that kind of blew my mind they even listened to the show, but that's kind of beside the point. But before we get too in detail on what we're going to be doing today, let's go through our weekly shield. Make sure you guys are following us on all of our socials. You can find us over at Facebook. That's probably our most active page, facebook.com/Convince Me Show. We're on Twitter at Convince Me Show. Occasionally we listen to you all over there too. We'll let you guys pick the show. We'll put up a poll. And when we do put up a poll, it will be over on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram. We're Convince Me Show over there as well. And then also, I hope you'll check out our YouTube page, tinyurl.com/Convince Me Show. Every single episode we do is uploaded over there. When it drops on the podcast, it drops on YouTube in a full video format each and every show that we do. So make sure you're checking out our YouTube. Again, tinyurl.com/Convince Me Show. And of course, this is a podcast. So every episode drops wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. If we're not where you listen to your favorite podcast, let us know, and we will do what we can to get there. So there's the weekly shield. And secondly, I want to address the elephant in the room. Last week, we took the week off. That was not intentional. We have families, we have kids, we have jobs, we have other things going on. Sometimes it's hard for the three of us to get together. So we apologize for that. Not promising there's going to be an episode next week either, but we're getting you this episode that you'll be getting this week. And then if we're not back next week, we'll be back the week after. Hopefully we can kind of get back in a groove of getting together and being available at the same time to get this show done for you guys. But we're doing the best we can, and we apologize for that missed week. Now, let's get to the fun stuff. This week's topic, again, as I said, as suggested to me by a listener of the show, who is this week's listener of the week. I guess we will give him that unofficial title, Mr. Eric Swan. Eric, thanks for the idea. Mr. Bennett, Mr. Elrod will be going head-to-head in another of our draft formats, which have been kind of popular. And we're going to be drafting this week action movie stars. Now, Eric specifically mentioned 80s movie stars. As you've seen throughout past episodes of this show, when it comes to knowing things and being hip to things about the 80s, Elrod sucks. So we're expanding that a little bit. Maybe if it was me versus Bennett, we could make it 80s, but then Elrod would screw up the decision.
Hold on. Whoa.
Cut the music. Draft.
Cut the music. I need to let you all in on some information I learned yesterday. You think I suck about 80s? My own wife told me that she has never watched the movie Top Gun. Top Gun. So guess what we're watching? Top Gun. So I ain't the worst.
When that happened, did you lose that love and feeling?
I did.
I was talking to my mom, and she was listening to the wrestling episode, and she said it in a nicer way, but she said, "Boy, Andy kind of looked like he was a little upset with the results." She said, "They were questionable results."
Yeah, that one's going to be that makes a couple times Elrod's got me now. I felt I should have won that one. There's been a couple I felt I should have won, but when Elrod is the host or when he's the mediator, when he's the judge, he picks. I may not like the decision. A vast majority of our audience may not like the decision. Some people would rather him be the judge than argue their side, a la Marvel fans. But that's beside the point. Anyway, Elrod sucks in the 80s for the most part. So we got way sidebarred there. But we expanded it just in general, action movie stars. We're going to pick, each of these guys are going to pick 4 apiece, and then I will have the chance to get my revenge. Make my decision on whose list is indeed the best. So, gentlemen, are you ready to determine our draft order?
I am.
You got your pen and paper ready. You may not need it. I'm going to do similar to what I did last time that I was here. The first question is just a question. If you both get it right, whoever answered first gets the choice. If you both miss it, we move to another tiebreaker. But the first part of it is just a question. Here's the question. Arnold Schwarzenegger, a man who I have no doubt will be taken by at least one of you in this draft. That only makes perfect sense and probably be taken pretty high. We've done a show on him before. When you think action movie stars, a lot of people think Schwarzenegger. He's made a lot of money. His movies have made a lot of money. But my question for you is, Arnold Schwarzenegger's top grossing single movie is what?
I'm ready.
But just say it.
Terminator 2.
Bennett, do you have a guess?
I'm going to go with Commando.
Well, I hate to say it, but Elrod was actually correct. It was Terminator 2. It brought in $515 million plus, which is his highest grossing movie, which kind of surprised me. I thought he might have had more that made a little more than that. But when I did look at inflation from that movie to 2021, in 2021 dollars, that would be $994 million. So that would have been close to $1 billion gross for that movie. But surprisingly, you don't see it often, but a sequel of his is his top grossing movie. So Elrod, by getting that correct, you have a choice. Are you going first, or are you going with the back-to-back picks on the snake for basically, do you want the first pick or do you want the second and third pick?
I want the second and third pick.
All
I'm going to
right.
let Bennett have the first opening pick.
Foregoing the opening draft pick.
Because I think I know where Bennett's going to go. So I'm good. I'm all about the value picks tonight. So yeah, I'll let him take the low-hanging fruit, and I'll get the 2 that I want at 2 and 3.
All right. Well, Mr. Bennett, you were on the clock.
Okay.
First pick.
Well, since if we're going to play it like that, I might have to switch up my first pick. I'm going to go with Sylvester Stallone as my number 1 pick. And here's why. Number 1, we've already had this discussion. We broke it down. Who's the number 1 and number 2? It's Arnold and Stallone, okay? And we had this little discussion. I didn't agree with the results, but we said that Stallone was the best. So it only makes sense if we're going to do top action movie stars. We need to start with a little bit of R&R. And I'm not talking about rest and relaxation. I'm talking about Rocky and Rambo, Mr. Stallone. He's pretty much like your your real life version of an underdog. We all know this. In the 80s and 90s, he became one of Hollywood's highest paid actors. And of course, his two biggest roles was Rocky, which made him a ton of money, and then Rambo, which Rambo all he basically does is run around and blow stuff up. And believe it or not, he was Rambo in 5 movies. I didn't realize he was that many. But it wasn't just in the 80s. He had a little resurgence around 2010 as a mercenary, Barney Ross in The Expendables. So he was able to bring in all these huge, huge names for this Expendables franchise that we had. Mr. Stallone has a Golden Globe Award. I don't think many people actually realize that. Of course, he's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And get this, he's the only actor in U.S. history to star in a box office #1 film across 5 decades. So that's pretty impressive. So worthy of my #1 pick, I'm going to go with Rocky Balboa.
2 things. First of all, great pick. But you said he had a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Is he in the Texas Cowboy Hall of Fame?
I'll get back to you.
Clay Walker wins again, Elrod. That was such a great point last week. And secondly, Elrod, this is why you don't pass on the first pick. You see your guy, you take your guy. If you think he's going to be there when their pick rolls back around, he may not be. You were visibly upset with that pick, Elrod.
I am. And here's why. I feel betrayed and I feel backstabbed because if you haven't watched our show, how about we rewind the tape a little bit to a little argument that me and you had. I had Sly Stallone, you had Schwarzenegger. This guy up here was our mediator. I lost. I was arguing for Sly Stallone. He says Arnold won back then, and now he chooses my guy, Sly Stallone, #1. How's that making sense? I feel backstabbed here. Backstabbed.
Wang.
Nothing. Okay.
I thought Stallone won that argument.
No.
You were Stallone and I was Arnold. Yeah.
Oh, we got some controversy. I'm pretty sure I lost that argument because I said Rocky about 100 times during that argument. Rocky.
I don't remember who that I picked.
I don't know.
This is why we need like notes and like a showrunner and assistant that can, those stats guys, sports booth.
Stat boy.
Somebody may have went back and already listened to it during his research.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess it's my turn. Well, if he went Sly Stallone, you got to go with the low-hanging fruit, which I thought that Bennett would go with his first pick, and that is the Governor himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I mentioned our earlier debate that we had about these two folks. It's very close. I think look at Arnold, you look at Sly Stallone, you could go either way with one or two. Both are iconic in the genre of an action movie. You got Arnold, of course, the Terminator. You got the better sequel, Terminator 2, is better than the original. He was the Predator. He also had Total Recall, True Lies, Conan the Barbarian. He's still relevant today. He was in the recent Terminator movie that debuted 2 years ago. He was in the Expendables movie. Arnold, I mean, he's the Terminator. So you cannot go wrong with Arnold or Sly Stallone at 1 or 2. I thought I would have Stallone #1, but I'm okay. You know what? I'm okay with it. I'm okay. So great #2 pick.
I mean, I got to be honest here. I think getting Arnold at 2 is a pretty big steal. Granted,
that is.
Had Bennett gone Arnold, I think Sly at 2 would have been a pretty good steal. I think based on this show's history, I'm not shocked at all that these were 1 and 2. Yeah. Where I might be shocked is in these future picks coming up. So everybody take a deep breath, get ready. We're coming back with pick 3 right after this.
Thank you.
And we are back. All right, guys. Draft is we're through the first round. Bennett with a little bit of a shock, doesn't take the Reggie Bush, goes the Mario Edwards route. Draft Sly Stallone with that number 1 pick. Elrod felt like he had no choice but to take Arnold there at number 2. Now we're getting in, like I said, I assume that would be the first 2 picks. Now we're getting into where I'm not sure where this is going to go. So Elrod, give us that first indication of where this is going to go. Second round, first pick, number 3 overall. Who you got?
Well, we got 1 and 2, which I consider a wash out of the way. Now the real draft starts right here. And I am going to go not off the wall, but I'm going to bring up to the table with my pick, kind of an off the wall pick. I'm going with the original martial arts specialist. I'm going Bruce Lee with my pick here. Here's the thing. Bruce Lee may not have the movies that these other, like a Mel Gibson or a Tom Cruise or Bruce Willis or Harrison Ford or somebody else that I could pick right here. But nobody was more influential to their discipline than Bruce Lee was. Bruce Lee basically invented mixed martial arts on the big screen. He was responsible. A lot of people hold him responsible for inventing UFC fighting as we see today. Bruce Lee, only in 4 movies in his life. He was in a television show. But his influence across mixed martial arts, he brought it to the mainstream level. None of these other guys can say that they had this much of an impact on their discipline than him. Only 4 movies, but you Enter the Dragon, 1973 film, put mixed martial arts on the national spectrum and paved the way for people like Jackie Chan, folks like that, Jet Li. So Bruce Lee, going number 3.
You forgot to mention he got punked out by Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But
Yeah.
have you even seen that movie?
I have not.
That takes me back to a better time when there were movie theaters. I went to watch that one by myself. It was fantastic. All right, Bennett. Second round, 4th overall pick comes to you. Who you got?
I'm going to go with somebody who's ranked 4th on the list of U.S. box office actors of all time as far as money grossed, and that is Harrison Ford. Think of 2 of the biggest franchises in the 80s. What do you think of? Indiana Jones and Star Wars. He was the leading role in both of these huge franchises. Harrison Ford is one of the biggest and most successful actors of the 80s, and here's why. He had roles in 4 of the top 10 highest grossing films of that decade. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 9. Raiders of the Lost Ark, that was 5th. Empire Strikes Back, 3rd. Return of the Jedi, 2. Return of the Jedi just by itself brought in $309 million. And here he is playing a huge role in 4 of these films. And outside of those franchise roles, he played in some other really good movies like Witness, The Fugitive, Air Force One, and one that a lot of people don't really think of when you think of Harrison Ford, but he was actually in the movie 42 as well, just to kind of show some diversity there. His career has spanned like 6 decades, and he's a recipient of the AFI Life Achievement Award. He's a Academy Award nominee, and he's a 4-time Golden Globe nominee. So man's put in a lot of work over the last 6 decades that he's been making movies, and some pretty iconic roles at that too. So got to go with him for my number 2 pick.
I like the pick. All right, Bennett, we're staying with you. We're going to round 3. First pick of round 3, 5th pick overall. Right back at you, B.
The guy I'm going to pick 3rd is a guy that takes his roles very seriously. He's known to take his characters to the extreme, and here recently he nearly drowned doing a stunt in his latest movie, and that is Jackie Chan. Elrod talked about him a little bit already. When you think of Jackie Chan, he is pretty much like a jack of all trades on the silver screen. He's mostly known for creating and performing pretty much all of his stunts, which a lot of these guys can't really say that. He's been acting since the 60s, so he's been doing it a long, long time too. He's put in over 150 films, so very much the kind of the comparison and the contrast between him and Bruce Lee. You know, they both have the martial arts background. Of course, Bruce Lee, you know, he did have a very short film career, very short life, tragically. But Jackie Chan went on to do 150 films, which is crazy. Pretty much any of these guys we're talking about, he's probably up there as far as being known on a global scale, especially, you know, with the Asian crowd too. He's a worldwide, huge, recognized actor. And some of the notable films that he was in, Fist of Fury and Enter the Dragon, which I believe were both Bruce Lee films. I'm gonna say Jackie Chan was in those. Also, a lot of people know Jackie Chan though for Police Story 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Rush Hour 1, 2, 3. Jackie Chan is a Oscar winner. He won an Oscar in 2016, and get this, he is a Guinness Book of World Records holder. Most stunts performed by a living actor. Of course he would be. Of course he would be. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Jackie Chan, number 3.
Good pick. Good pick.
Very, very, very good pick. Elrod, round 3, 6th overall. Who you got?
Wow, this is still the draft so far. I cannot believe that one Bruce Willis has failed to number 6, but I'm going with my second Bruce of the night. I mean, Bruce Willis, what can you say about this man? I mean, he is John McClane from Die Hard. Die Hard is a Christmas movie, by the way, for our loyal listeners and people that may not have heard the show before. It's definitely a Christmas movie. John McClane, Die Hard 1, 2 was okay. Die Hard with a Vengeance was good. 4th one, John McClane. What can you say? Other films, Armageddon, probably my second or third favorite movie of all time. This guy just churns out action movie after action movie, hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. Of course, you got The Fifth Element, The Last Boy Scout, Red. He's had a few movies here lately that hasn't done quite as good as his 90s and early 2000s work. But I cannot believe I get Bruce Willis at 6. I mean, that is unbelievable. So Bruce Willis is my pick.
The Last Boy Scout has one of the most iconic opening scenes in movie history. I don't remember a whole lot about that movie. I remember that opening scene very vividly. Great movie. All right. Well, we've flown through these first 3 rounds. Now it's time to round out your lineups. Elrod, this will be your last pick. Just to remind the listener, your first round pick, you went with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Your second round pick, you went with Bruce number 1 with Bruce Lee. Your third round pick, you went with Bruce number 2 with Bruce Willis. We are ready for Bruce Matthews here with your third pick.
Bruce Pearl is my 4th pick. Bruce Pearl.
Well,
no,
then your team will get thrown out.
No, my 4th pick. You see, I want to win this episode, and I know with my 4th pick, I almost assuredly secure victory here because I'm going to be sucking up. I know this guy is one of your favorites. You're talking about it all the time. I'm picking Jean-Claude Van Damme as my 4th pick. Jean-Claude Van Damme, in the 90s, you would be hard-pressed to find someone if Sly Stallone is the 80s, Jean-Claude Van Damme is the early 90s. Universal Soldier, the sequel, maybe not as good. Hundreds of millions of dollars in the early 90s. Jean-Claude Van Damme, if you pair him with Bruce Lee on this list, I don't think that in terms of actual street fight with Bennett's folks, you're gonna come out ahead. You're just not. And you got Arnold. So Jean-Claude Van Damme rounds out my 2 times Bruce and Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's a tough 4 to beat right there, my friend.
The muscles from Brussels. Love that pick. But I got to call you out here.
Uh-oh.
I'm all about sucking up to the mediator, the judge. I get it. But if you're going to name one Jean-Claude Van Damme movie and you name Universal Soldier,
what?
Really?
That's the only one I've ever watched. I know that's going to shock you. I have not watched Street Fighter. Okay, Kickboxer, and Blood. I've seen Bloodsport. I'll take it back.
I was about to say, have you not ever seen Bloodsport?
I've seen Bloodsport, but Universal Soldier is the one that I know him from the most. And that's
I
probably
love Universal Soldier, but if you're going to name one movie, it's Bloodsport.
Yeah,
get
Bloodsport,
out of here!
Yeah.
Get out of here with Street Fighter. That movie sucked, even with him in it.
But I knew that you would like that pick. That's the reason I went that way. Trying to win.
You never seen a Jean-Claude. Bennett. You know, a lot of times in the NFL, they say that the very last pick is Mr. Irrelevant. But looking at these 2 lists and knowing that I have to make a decision, this pick will be very relevant. And just to recap, like I did for Elrod for our listeners, Bennett with the first overall pick took Sly Stallone. Second overall pick, Harrison Ford. Third, Jackie Chan. Who is going to round out your team and round out this draft?
I am going to mix it up and take one that probably nobody's going to see coming. I'm going to go with arguably the greatest female in action movie history, Angelina Jolie.
Ooh.
Angelina Jolie is the gold standard for what a female role can bring to the big screen. She wasn't the damsel in distress. You know, she was one out there kicking tails. She got her leading role in Hackers back in '95. She had done some films before that, but that's where she really took off. In the 2000s, she became one of Hollywood's biggest stars, most notably as Lara Croft in the Tomb Raider. I think the first one, maybe the second, I don't know. But she was pretty big in Tomb Raider. And then she went on to star alongside Brad Pitt in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, another huge action movie. Then she goes from there and stars in Wanted, another huge movie, Salt, which is a good movie, and The Tourist. And The Tourist got her a Golden Globe Award for Best Actress. And when you look at Angelina Jolie, she's consistently ranked among the highest paid actresses. So I think she definitely deserves a spot just for, she was kind of one of the leading women out there that paved the way for a lot of these action movies you see as starring women now. She was kind of on the forefront of that. So I think she was a huge inspiration to a lot of female actresses getting into. So Angelina Jolie, my 4th pick.
All right. Well, that will round us out. Let's move on. Bennett, are you still there? There's a little technical difficulty on the video, but can you still hear me?
I'm here.
Okay.
I hear you.
Okay. Well, you're froze video-wise, but the audio's good. So YouTube's got a weird face of Bennett right now until it fixes itself. But podcast listeners know no different. All right. Elrod, we're going to start with you. Explain to me, give me your pitch why your team, your 4 is better than Bennett's 4.
All right. So we have, beat a dead horse with Bennett and I's pick with Sly Stallone and Schwarzenegger. So you're not going to have a decision based on those 2. You got to look at 2 through 4 for each of us. Bruce Lee, arguably, he basically is the father of mixed martial arts. He paved the way for Jackie Chan to even be relevant in the industry. You look at Bruce Willis with his work in Die Hard. Die Hard is absent Rambo. you have Die Hard in terms of a pure action hero. John McClane, Bruce Willis, Armageddon. 4, you got Jean-Claude Van Damme. You've got pure action at 2, 3, and 4 of my picks. And no disrespect to Angelina Jolie, but she doesn't hold a candle to Jean-Claude Van Damme in terms of an action star. Jackie Chan, love him. Love him and Chris Tucker. He's not Bruce Lee. He's just not. And Harrison Ford, as much as I love Harrison Ford, The Fugitive might be a top 5 favorite movie of mine of all time. Him and Bruce Willis. 2, 3, 4. I think my 2, 3, 4 stronger overall than Bennett's.
Bennett, same to you. Why are your 4 better than Elrod's 4?
Well, I think during the closing argument of the Stallone versus Arnold, we had way back about a year ago, what sealed the deal was that Stallone created and was his own character. He didn't just portray it, he created it. So I don't think anybody else can say this on their list, that they created their own character there. That's for Stallone. Huge in Rocky and Rambo, both. Harrison Ford, like I mentioned earlier, 2 of the biggest franchises in the 80s. He was a star in both of them. And of the top 10 films in the 80s, he was in 4 of the top 10 films. Just huge guy during that time. And even still doing it today, you know. Jackie Chan, you know, he came up with and did a lot of his own stunts. He's a global icon. He's known worldwide. He's been in over 150 films. And Angelina Jolie, she is the female action gold standard. I do think she deserves a place on this list, because I don't think without Angelina Jolie, we don't quite have what we have today. I think, you know, it took somebody like Angelina Jolie to play the parts that she's played in Tomb Raider, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Salts, Tourist, all those. You know, if we didn't have that, I don't know exactly where the women's roles would be in action films. So I think I've got a pretty balanced list of across the board. It's not just a very cookie cutter top 4 list. I tried to have a little bit of variety there. So that's my top 4.
Gotcha. All right. Well, this is tough for me, because I have a few opinions on both of your teams. It's kind of my prep for this. I did go and I looked at some lists like I have been known to do in the history of the show, and I'm basing off of 3 lists. There was, as far as an official critic source that I could find, Screen Rant was probably my best option. And I took the top 10 names and I listed them here. And you each drafted 3 of them. Elrod drafted Arnold, Bruce Willis, and Bruce Lee. Bennett drafted Stallone, Ford, and Jackie Chan. So if you look at that list, it's kind of a wash. Then I went to Ranker, as I've been known to do, to see what people thought. And again, Bennett picked 3 off that list of the top 10, and Elrod picked 3 off that list of the top 10. But I don't always agree with people. When we look at the Ranker list here, they have at number 5 Jason Statham. No disrespect to him, but when you look at all the great action movie stars, I don't put him top 5. But apparently enough people do. So, but anyway, 3 apiece. We'll throw that out. For fun, I created my favorite 5. Just looking at not at skill, not at ability, just my favorite. And Elrod had 2 of those. Bennett had 1. Arnold and Sly were on there. You split those. Of course, Elrod went with Jean-Claude Van Damme, the muscles from Brussels. Even if he did throw out, never mind. And then the other 2 on this list, on my personal list, that if one of you would have grabbed them, would have done wonders for you. One of those was Antonio Banderas. Now, to be fair, he's not on either of the other two lists I pulled. But you go back and watch Antonio Banderas in Desperado. He's fantastic. He did The Mask of Zorro, Legend of Zorro. He had a couple great action movies. Love me some Antonio Banderas. And then the other one that I have on my list that neither of you selected, probably one of, if not the greatest action movie villains of all time, and that's Dolph Lundgren. Of course, Rocky IV. He was the big bad Russian. If he dies, he dies. And then Last Action Hero, Universal Soldier. Dolph was the key villain there. Of course, he's also he's also been involved, as pretty much everybody else we've discussed has been involved in the Expendables movies. But anyway, those were my guys. Looking at these lists, I can convince myself that either one of these really are winning lists. If we do it round by round, first round, Sly or Arnold, I would go Sly for the reason that I did in the initial show. Bruce Lee versus Harrison Ford, I'd go Harrison Ford. Just because, like Bennett stated, he dominated with Star Wars, dominated with Indiana Jones. And Bruce Lee, while probably the most legitimately talented of anybody we've discussed tonight, as Elrod yourself pointed out, not in a whole lot of movies. When we're talking about action movies, Bruce Willis, Jackie Chan. Here's my thing. I love Bruce Willis, and I know I'm in the minority with this opinion. I don't consider Bruce Willis an action movie star. Die Hard, yes. Die Hard's absolutely action movies, but most of his other movies aren't. That's the same way a lot of people consider Tom Cruise an action movie star because of Mission Impossible. I really don't.
Top Gun's not an action movie?
I mean, he's in action movies, but he's not an action movie actor.
He does some of his own stunts, just like Jackie Chan does.
I agree with that, but never mind. I almost said something that might have offended, one person that might listen to the show. And then if you're just looking at personal preference in the last round, I'm not a huge fan of Angelina Jolie, personally. I'm a huge fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme, so Elrod would win that one. But if we really, really look at this, I've got to pick one, and this is really close. So whoever does not come out victorious knows that this was really, really, really close. But because Elrod, you have one person on your team that wasn't in a lot of movies, and another person on your team that I personally don't consider an action movie star.
Oh, this is crap.
Even though Jean-Claude Van Damme, steal of the draft, 7 overall, in my opinion. Arnold, a steal at 2. I'll give you that. When you look at Bennett's team, Stallone, it's really close with him and Arnold. I went Stallone a year ago. I got to go Stallone again. Harrison Ford, the face of 2 huge action franchises. Jackie Chan can be hilarious, but he's like Bruce Lee, except actually did a whole lot of movies, whereas Bruce Lee didn't, although not as talented. And Angelina Jolie, I'm not a huge fan of her, but you can't deny her best movies are the ones where she's not trying to act, she's trying to fight people. So for that, the slight edge I'm giving to our winner, Mr. Bennett. You have convinced me that your team is the better team.
I cannot believe I wasted a pick on Jean-Claude Van Damme thinking that was going to steal the victory when I could have chosen someone like Mel Gibson or, I don't know, Clint Eastwood, which we haven't talked about tonight.
Well, You had your chance. I could tell you were just sucking up when you hit me with
I
Universal.
was. That
Soldier
was
and
a
was
total
it.
suck up move.
You didn't believe it. You've got to believe it for it to work.
I didn't believe it. I still don't.
Bennett, are you still with us?
Bennett
I'm
is
here.
still
I'm
shocked
listening,
that
guys.
he
I'm
won.
listening.
Look at him. Look at his face up there.
I know. His face has been frozen for 5 minutes on the video feed, but his audio's there.
Am I still not moving?
No,
You're not
you're
moving.
still frozen. Your
Wow.
audio's
I'm
still
still
good,
here.
though.
Yeah. Hey, fun fact real quick about Jean-Claude Van Damme. The creators of Mortal Kombat wanted him to be in their video game. They wanted him to be in the Mortal Kombat franchise, but that kind of fell through with other obligations that he had. So instead of getting Jean-Claude Van Damme, we got Johnny Cage.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So I thought that was pretty neat.
That
Here's
is
your fun
pretty-
fact.
That is pretty cool. See, Elrod Bennett coming at me with the real Jean-Claude Van Damme stats.
Elrod, you need to go watch Death Warrant with Jean-Claude Van Damme in it.
Death Warrant, another one. Kickboxer, great
Kickboxer.
Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
Just not a big fan of his. I'm just not. Even though I picked
Okay.
him, not a big fan.
Kickboxer, I just finished watching it too. He's kind of got like a weird accent in Kickboxer. Did you notice that?
It's been so long since I've seen it, but probably.
Granted, it came out in like 88 or 89, but that's another good one.
Bloodsport's
Get your
one
homework
of
this
my
week,
favorite.
Elrod.
Wasn't he in one of the Expendable movies?
Yeah, he played the bad guy,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
cool because all these guys are on the same team. Jean-Claude came in and said, "I'd be villain."
And he's also a pretty decent kickboxer himself. He starred in a movie called Kickboxer, and as a I wouldn't go as far as say a professional kickboxer, but he did have a kickboxing career where he went 18-1. So what he
Okay,
was doing on the big screen, he legit knew what he was doing.
In their prime, take one. Bruce Lee or Jean-Claude Van Damme in their prime.
Bruce Lee.
I mean,
Well, this
yeah.
is conflicting right down there.
Bruce Lee would kill you with like his pinky. Dude was crazy.
Speaking of killing people with their pinky, how did we go this whole show and nobody gives any love to Chuck Norris?
Wow. Yeah, but Chuck Norris is more TV show based. It's not really in action movies. I mean, he was in some movies, but not. He was more famous for a television show.
He's in Dodgeball.
He is in Dodgeball. Chuck Norris wasn't in any movies. Remember, folks, at the beginning of this program, I said Elrod knows nothing about the 80s, and he sucks when it comes to 80s related topics. But yeah, we gave no love to him. Another name that I love that almost ended up on my favorites list, but somebody I didn't consider an action movie star until I saw the name on another list, and I got to thinking about it, and he kind of is, although he's still not to me, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
The Matrix
John Wick.
movies, John Wick. I mean, he will always be Bill
Yeah.
S. Preston Esquire from Bill and Ted to me, and he'll be Shane Falco. But really, he's an action movie star too.
Yeah.
Crazy thought. Well, there you go, everybody. There was our action movie star draft. If you have a topic that you're just itching for us to do, let us know. Hit us up on our socials. If you know us personally, reach out. Let us know. We're very open to suggestions. But yeah, that was fun. Elrod looks a little dejected, but it happens sometimes. I don't know how Bennett looks right now because on our video feed, he's looked the
He's still
exact
shocked.
same for the last
He's still
10
shocked.
minutes. So,
I am here. I'm not a dog.
oh, man. Well, that will wrap up this episode. Like I said, hopefully we'll get a show out next week. No promises there, but at least if there's not one next week, don't freak out. We haven't ended the show. We'll be back the week after that. As a matter of fact, this is weird. We're recording this on a Saturday night. Just full disclosure, something we never do. So by the time you're listening to this, I will be relaxing on a family vacation at the beach. So hopefully you are not having as much fun as I am. No offense. But with that said, I am Mr. Rutherford. Bennett, Elrod, any parting words?
Well, I feel like I got jabbed just because, you know, I might have had it in for you last couple episodes. So I deserved it. I just chalk it up as I deserve this loss, especially when I try to suck up to you and it backfired. So it's what it is.
I'm going to sum it up with maybe this might be my new slogan going forward. Bennett knows action movies. If Bo knows, now we're going to have for Bennett. Bennett knows action movies.
BCAM. Bennett knows action movies. But thank you guys for joining us again. Make sure whatever platform you're listening to us on, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps us out. Make sure you're checking out the YouTube. Do the same there. Let us know what you think. For Mr. Bennett, the still not moving Mr. Bennett, hopefully we'll be back next time and he will be mobile. And for Mr. Elrod, I'm Rut, and we will see you guys next time. And until then, peace.